Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of Sin and Tonic. Today's story is a big bad boy, and I can't believe I'd not heard of it. So let's go. Sin and Tonic! I'm coming to the USA today, baby, in today's story. It's been a while since I've covered a case in the US of A, and this one did not disappoint. This story takes place in the 1990s in Indianapolis, Indiana. Oh, mouthful. Indianapolis. Love that. And it was here in Indianapolis, Indiana, that a number of men, all of which with a few things in common, started to disappear. They were all gay. They were all around the same height and the same age. Very similar. So this is always worrying. In July of 1993, somebody called Roger Goodlett would go missing. He went out to a gay bar and he didn't return home. It was really unlike him to not be in contact with his mum or friends or family or anyone. He just disappeared. And that was just like not usual. So weirdly, I don't get this. I don't know whether it's the same now, but the police in that area, the policy is that they don't launch an investigation. They don't launch an investigation until it's been 30 days, like a proper investigation. I mean, what's that about? I don't get that. Maybe I should have read more about that, but that doesn't make sense to me. Oh, someone's gone missing. Oh, see you in a month. Maybe they'll come back in a month. What, a month? That's a long time, isn't it? I can understand like 24 hours, even 48 hours. Give it time, see what's going on. But no, a month. Didn't get it. Can you tell? That boggles me. Anyhow, his family then, they knew that something was wrong and that this was not like Roger. So they got in contact with somebody, and this name is absolutely fabulous. I'm going to say it the whole way through, the full name. They got in contact with somebody called Virgil Vandergriff. Shut the front door. He was a private investigator. And I imagine with this 30-day calling off period, what the hell, that I don't understand, I imagine that he was often working missing person cases, because who wants to wait a month? However, within 2 days of Roger's family contacting him, another family contacted him, and this is where he started to become concerned, because the second family, it was almost identical. It was another gay man, similar appearance, height and age. To begin Virgil Vandergriff's investigation, he put flyers, missing person flyers up around the place, and it wasn't long before witnesses started to come forward with information. One witness said they saw Roger getting into a blue car outside or near the library downtown. You can answer me this, because I know a lot of you are in the US of A. Does everywhere have a downtown? Like, is that a stupid question? I don't honestly know, because I mean, maybe that is stupid, because like everywhere here you have a town. So we don't all say we're going to and then name the place. Sometimes you just say, you might do, but you might just say, oh, we're going to town. But obviously there's more than one town in the UK. Like, but if your local town, you would call it your town. But what is downtown? Like, if you say I'm going to the shops in town, but what does downtown mean? Downtown. Is that town? Or is it the bottom of your town? Help me. I've never understood that. I digress. Another witness came forward to say, yes, they had also seen Roger getting into a blue car. So this is looking like, okay, blue car. And they noticed that the blue car that he got into had Ohio plates. So just a bit more information from that witness. And then things started to spiral a bit, because a local gay magazine got in contact with Virgil Vandergriff, and they said, are you aware that we have heard of even more gay men that have gone missing, actually? So, and they wanted to just make him aware. This made him feel like there was more to this, and that perhaps this was the beginning of the hunt for a serial killer. After 30 days, the police department started to investigate. Thank you. And they discovered 8 unsolved missing person cases, all involving gay men. 8. They searched for links between these 8 men. And the biggest link that they found was a relationship with a man. So there was a man that 3 of the missing men had a relationship with. They then contacted this man, they met this man, they went to his property, they searched his property, and nothing. And the case then went cold. There was no evidence, and it felt just like a coincidence. The case was cold for 3 months, and then Virgil Vandergriff got a phone call that would start things moving again. This guy was called Tony Harris, and he called up to say that he thought he might know somebody that had something to do with Roger's disappearance. Now, this guy he'd met at a gay bar, and he'd called himself Brian Smart. They got on, they had a few drinks together at the bar, and then Brian invited Tony back to his place to carry on the party, if you know what I mean. And they drove. So this guy, he's drink driving, surely. That's bad. So he gets in the car and he drives Tony to a very large, a mansion. He described it as a mansion. It was out of town, so they'd driven for a while. When they arrived, they went to the swimming pool. Fancy house, got a nice swimming pool. They set up and they had a few drinks around the swimming pool. Tony said it was a bit odd, the swimming pool, because it was surrounded by mannequins. What? A bit odd. What? That would be enough for me. What is this? Did you not ask? Maybe he did. Why have you got mannequins all around your pool? That's just weird and freaky. And I'd want to go home. Anything with mannequins, get out of there. Things start to take a sinister turn here. The 2 men get into the swimming pool, and Brian asks Tony if he has ever participated in sexual asphyxiation. And Tony says no, he hasn't. And Brian sort of tells him, it's amazing. He really sells it. And then he grabs a swimming pool hose, right? And he proceeds to strangle Tony. Tony starts to realise in this moment that this isn't just he thinks he's going to kill him. He's like, okay, this is going too far. I'm going to die. So he fakes passing out, thankfully, because this then makes Brian stop. A little while later, Tony opens his eyes, and he said that Brian was just genuinely really shocked, as if he thought, I thought I'd killed you. And then Tony left. So Tony survived this ordeal, and he really felt like he was meant to be dead. This guy was just wanted to kill him. There is speculation as to why Tony survived that night, and they think that because Tony was big, he was 6'5", and they think that Brian just thought, okay, and then just let him go. He was intimidated he knew he couldn't overpower him. And this guy just knows that you've just tried to kill him. So that is the speculation as to why Tony survived that night. With this information, the police start to stake out all of the gay bars in the local area, because this is where Tony and Brian met. They don't have any luck. However, after a little while, Brian contacts Tony. So this guy that has just tried to kill him, strangle him to death in a swimming pool, makes contact again. What the hell? The police trace that phone call back to a payphone, so they don't have any, there's not an address. And then it gets even worse, because then Brian turns up at Tony's house. This freaks Tony out. He is completely petrified now. What is going on? The poor guy's just scared for his life. He feels like this Brian is trying to finish him off. The police, clever old police, they think, we could use this to our advantage, and they tell a very scared Tony to arrange a meet-up between himself and Brian, and they're hoping that they can, catch him trying to murder someone, or just, detain him and question him. But that's scary. I hate it when they do that, because what if he really killed Tony? Anyway, that didn't happen because for some reason Brian didn't show up. So maybe he was spooked, maybe he caught wind of something, I don't know, but he didn't show up. Do excuse me if my eyes are a bit all over the place and I look like shite, because I'm really tired. It's beyond tired. It's been the busiest week ever. And I had to go on a school trip with a bunch of 10-year-olds. 5 hours on a coach. Oh my Lord. And then walking around museum. Brilliant. I mean, it was in London. It was brilliant. But just a really long day. And just for fun, the night before that, and then last night, my youngest son, he just doesn't like me sleeping. Honest. So I'm just destroyed. So I'm doing my best, but I really feel like, you know when you feel like you can't open your eyes wide enough? That's how I feel today. So I feel like I look weird. If I do, I mean, what can I do? Nothing. You've just got to go with what you got, haven't you? Next, the police and Virgil Vandergriff, they decide that maybe they can find this mansion based on Tony's description of it. So he said it was out of town. He described it having a long, winding driveway. Wouldn't that be nice? And a sign with the word something, something farm or farms. So they had a little bit to go on. The guy had also said something which he found odd about just being the caretaker of this mansion, and that he actually lived in Ohio. Ooh. That car, remember, blue car, had the Ohio plates, didn't it? This worried police because they then realised that they could be looking at even more missing person cases in Ohio as well as Indianapolis. It just made their area bigger. Although I did read, and I think I've seen it on Criminal Minds, that serial killers will often start not necessarily near where they live. They might start further afield, and then sometimes as they get more confident, if they don't get caught, they move nearer. They get cocky. But at first, they're sort of out of their own, like you don't shit on your front doorstep, that sort of thing. So the police and investigators in Indianapolis, they reached out to the police and investigators in Ohio, and it's like the worst case scenario because, yes, they have similar cases in Ohio as well. They also had cases that were similar but different. But it tweaked this spark in one of the investigators, and he felt like the guy that was responsible for the disappearance of these gay men was also responsible for the murders of 3 or 4 victims that he was on the case of. And he ended up being on this case for 10 years, like a whole decade. But he really thought in his gut, I think this is the same guy. There had been these murders that they called the I-70 murders. I'm guessing that's the name of the road. There were 4 bodies found in 85, 86, 89, and then 99. All gay men, all strangled, and their bodies dumped off of the I-70. Just dumped, like a bag of rubbish, normally into sort of waterway, sort of canal thingies. Awful. But he really believed that this guy that was responsible for these disappearing gay men was also the guy that was responsible for these murders. He had an inkling, he had a little tickle in his tummy about it. Because this case is now becoming more complex, we've got the I-70 murders, we've got missing gay men in Indianapolis and Ohio. It's getting bigger. The FBI get involved. Ooh. And they do that thing, which I think is fascinating. The profiling. Oh, who watched Mindhunters? Amazing. I love anything like that. So amazing, isn't it? How they just clever. Sadly, they do sometimes get it wrong. But when they get it right, it's like, wow. They reckoned that they were looking for a man in his 40s, but they think that he started his killing in his late 20s, early 30s. They thought he was married, but frustrated with his sexuality. So married to a woman, but actually gay. We'll find out if they were right. And like I said earlier, they did suspect that he began his killing further away from home, and then it got nearer and nearer. While this is all going on, the hunt for the mansion is still underway, and they find something promising. So Virgil Vandergriff sends his very best agent, worker, I don't know what you call them, he sends him to go and just have a nose. And he reports back to Virgil Vandergriff and just says, this is ticking all of the boxes. Windy drive, big old house. It was in Hamilton County, very posh. And I've got to read out the numbers of the road because it's amazing to me. So it was East 156th Street. How cool's that? East 156th Street. Love it. However, like I said, posh, and in this very nice neck of the woods, the Hamilton police were just they were not issuing a search warrant for this place on just some story of some gay man that's just said, oh, this person here tried to kill me. They're like, no, not here. That doesn't happen here. And so, no, you will not have your search warrant. You need more evidence. That was the tone that they set. Not in our neighbourhood. A bit like that. Buckle up, because it is very frustrating with the whole prejudice thing. Is prejudice the word I'm looking for? Privilege. That's what I mean. Privileged. This mansion would belong to Herb Baumeister. He was a married father of 3. And then there is a break in the case. On a night out at a gay bar, Tony Harris sees the guy that tried to kill him in the swimming pool. And he decides, he's with a friend, and he says to his friend, can you please follow him and take down, see what car he gets into, take down his number plates. I can't do it because he knows me. So his friend does. He follows him out and he sees the car and he takes down his plates. And those plates are registered to Herb Baumeister. Herb was born in Indianapolis. He went on to go to Indiana University, and he dropped out, but he did meet his wife there, Julie, and they married not long after. Herb was a bit of a weirdo, to put it politely. I don't know how else to say it. He was just an odd person, and it would eventually come, well, I think it was kept a secret, but because of his strange behaviour, his father or his parents took him to be assessed. They took him to a mental institute, and he was actually diagnosed as a schizophrenic, but it was kept quiet. I mean, that just angers me straight away because he was never treated for it. It was just, oh, okay, helpful. I mean, knowingly not treating a diagnosed mental illness is asking for trouble, is it not? There were some stories, he apparently he took a piss on one of his boss's desks. I mean, we've all probably wanted to. I don't think I'd actually want to piss on someone's desk, but he went there, and he kept a slice of cake in a drawer for months to watch it decompose and stuff. That's just odd, isn't it? It's just odd. And I believe in his childhood there were incidents of harming small animals and things like that. Despite these untreated mental health issues, Herb and Julie, they went on to have a seemingly quite normal relationship, and they had 3 children together, and they then opened a chain of successful thrift stores. Not going to lie, I'm assuming that that's a charity shop, a thrift store. I'm guessing we call them charity shops, and maybe not, maybe thrifty, like pound shops. So they like pound shops, like cheap shops. They were called Save-A-Lot. So either charity or cheap shops. But they had this really successful business, 3 children. Eventually they got this beautiful mansion with a swimming pool with loads of mannequins around it, each to their own. I've just realised that the tumble dryer was on. Heck. My apologies if that sounds awful. I can't start over. Then investigators went round. Now I feel like I sound really loud. Investigators went to have a little chat with Herb. They went to talk with him, and he denied any knowledge of these missing men, disappearing men, and he refused to let police search his shops, his property. So the Indianapolis police department, they approach Hamilton County Police again, or the court, and they say, we need a search warrant. This guy he's been identified by a witness, and then they've seen him at a club, he's got into a car, and we've identified him through his vehicle as well, so come on. And still, Hamilton Police said they needed more evidence. They would not issue a search warrant on what they had. 3 months later, the police department in Indianapolis, they find out that Julie is filing for a divorce. So she doesn't want to be with this Herb anymore. And they are crafty and they think, well, maybe she's really pissed off. Maybe we can sneak in there and get her permission to search the property and all of this, the shops and the land, because they highly suspected that Herb was hiding something or that they would find stuff on his property. Julie said no. She said no, and she also contacted her lawyer. She asked her lawyer to talk to the police department and just find out more of what was going on, because the police department had told her their suspicions. They'd been honest, and they'd said about these missing gay men and that Herb, was a person of interest. When the lawyer spoke to the police, they divulged more. They said, we do have a witness that has identified Herb as a man that, tried to kill him in a swimming pool. And they also told him about the car, the man getting into the car and that car being registered to Herb. Now, this surprised Julie. It took her back that they actually had evidence. They actually had this stuff against Herb, and it made her think. She also divulged some information to her lawyer, and her lawyer must have been like, well, he told her that they needed to tell the police and she refused. But a few months previously, her son had found a human skull on their property. Well, the remains. He found a skull and took her there, and there were these remains. Herb said that his father was, and I believe this is true, he was in the medical profession, and he had like a skeleton for they sometimes have them in their offices. So it's your dad's skeleton from his medical practice, and you thought, I'll just bury that in the garden. And Julie thought, okay, honestly, people. Meanwhile, Herb and Julie's divorce was getting messy. The finances were in disarray. They were closing businesses. Things were not going well. And Herb wanted custody of their 3 children. Julie's lawyer was very concerned at this point that with everything unravelling, business, possibly losing their house, this is all quite big, serious, stressful stuff, and the fact that Herb was quite desperate to have custody of the children, which he probably wouldn't get, he was concerned that Herb would hurt the children or hurt Julie. Julie still refused to let her lawyer divulge about the skull in the garden. She said no. And it's not until Herb refuses to bring their son back from a lakeside holiday that Julie talks to the police. And she allows them to search the property and the land. I'd be so scared to do that when he's still not back with your son. What if he finds out? I think she was scared of that as well. She was scared that he'd find out that she had allowed the police to start searching the property and their land. I think they had 15 or 18 acres. That's a big old land, isn't it? That's a chunk. Yeah, she was worried about it. So they went to the police department and asked for an order to go and collect their son and bring him back to Julie, because she just feared that Herb might do something. They do warrant this, and a police vehicle goes to the lake. They've got a lakeside. They're really rich, aren't they? So they've got a lakeside cabin. They go and collect Julie and Herb's son, but they leave Herb there. Odd, when he's clearly a person of interest in a serious case, but they leave Herb there. As soon as Julie mentions that her son found a skull on their property in 1994, I believe we're now in 1996, they start digging. They start digging in the area that the skull was found, And the search goes on and it gets wider and it spreads out. They find over 5,000 bones belonging to at least 11 people, but no skulls. I don't know. I don't know what happened to the skulls. Obviously, without a skull, it's incredibly difficult to identify. You can't identify these victims, which is so sad because there's no teeth, there's no dental records or anything like that. So I can only assume, because I think some of the bones and the fragments were burnt and then buried. I can only assume that he burnt the skulls and then smashed them and got rid of teeth and things like that, just to avoid identification. Nice. Don't let any families have any closure. Get this. Because there was no evidence that Herb was the person that killed these people that are buried all around his garden, he was not arrested. Hamilton County refused because there was no evidence that he'd actually killed anyone. Good one. When they were searching the property, they found that the swimming pool did have all of these mannequins around it, and this confirmed, Tony's story. So it's all adding up. Julie also mentioned that a pair of handcuffs had in the past gone missing from one of their thrift stores, and when they were digging up, they did find an arm bone with handcuffs attached to it. The investigators were keen to find out how this might be. Herb was married to Julie. They had 3 children and they lived in this mansion. How was it that Herb was, did Julie know more than she was saying? How did he have this double life? What was going on? And then got the old diary out, and it turned out that at every incident, every disappearance, all the dates, they all lined up with times that Julie and her 3 children were at their lakeside cabin. So they had this beautiful lakeside cabin, and they would go and they would have weekends there sometimes, or they would go and have like a whole week there in the holidays and things like that. They used it a lot. It was a little getaway. I mean, why wouldn't you? It's lovely and they've got the lake. But Herb would nearly always stay at home. And it was in these times that Herb was living his secret life, his double life. He'd pack up his kids and his wife in the car, off you go, have a lovely weekend, have a nice week, see you when you get home. And then he'd hop off to the gay bars in town and ply men that he fancied with alcohol, and then invite them back to his mansion for more drinks and to be strangled in his swimming pool. We don't know, because the bones and things that were found, there was no skulls. It was difficult to determine causes of death. There wasn't like bullet holes, or sometimes they can look at bones and determine if there was a violent death. Skull, obviously they had no skulls, but because of what they'd heard from Tony, it is assumed that most of Herb's victims were strangled. Despite all of this, Hamilton County still refused to arrest Herb, and it very much was a not in my town situation, like I said. They could not believe, they really could not believe that a married white man, rich, in Hamilton County, in a mansion, could have done what they were saying he had. They just couldn't fathom it. And I think fear of arresting somebody with money and power stopped them. 4 days after the search began in Herb's property and on his land, and he would have known what they were finding there, he contacted his brother, and his brother then contacted the police. Herb was requesting money to be transferred to him via some sort of way. I don't know how it all works, like a transfer or something, to a particular place, and it was right on the Canadian border. So it was quite obvious that Herb was going to do a runner. Even knowing the location that Herb had requested money to be sent to, even knowing that he would go there, they had this information, Hamilton County still refused to go and arrest Herb. The investigating officer on the I-70 case, he at this point now was pretty certain that Herb was his guy as well, that he was the person that had murdered these gay men. All of their bodies had been found en route from Indianapolis to Ohio. They'd been strangled. They were all gay men. And they just couldn't understand, though, the thing that held them back from being like, yeah, it's him, was the fact that why had he changed his MO? Why had he gone from dumping bodies in the 80s on his way back from Indianapolis to burying them in his garden? So why? But what they discovered was at the time of the killings and the murders in the 80s, Herb and his family did not live in... Did I say the name of the place? Fox Hollow Farm. I apologise. Fox Hollow Farm was this big acreage and mansion and a mannequin swimming pool. In the 80s, they lived in a smaller house with just a small backyard. So no, he wasn't going to be burying his bodies there. So they believe that in the 80s he was travelling, and again it would fit, so he was travelling further away to kill his victims or to get his victims, and then dumping their bodies on his way home. Awful. Off the I-70. That would explain why when he then moved into Fox Hollow Farm with this huge amount of land that he could bury bodies in, he got lazy, he got complacent, he was using his own car, he started killing people nearer to home, and he started burying their bodies on his own land. Julie's trusty diary, good job she kept it. It confirmed that she, again, was always out of town at the lake house when the killings occurred, the I-70 killings. So her and her children on those dates were not at home. It's all tying in together, tied up in a bow. Felt like a bit of a shit show because after a while, Julie sort of said to the investigating officer, no one's actually looked at Herb's car. So they're like digging up all these bones, like trying to like get enough evidence to get Herb, and his car's just sitting there. Okay. So then they go ahead and they forensically investigate Herb's car. It was a bit fruitless. They found a very sort of small dot of blood in the car. It could have been anything, couldn't it? And it was just too small for them to say who it belonged to. Like, they couldn't analyse it. And for such a frustrating case, there is only one way to describe its ending, and that is also very frustrating. On the 4th of July in 1996, Herb's brother contacted the police and the investigators to let them know that Herb had committed suicide. So Herb never stood trial for any of his crimes. He never divulged any information about his victims or just anything. He just didn't. Even in a three-page letter suicide. Sorry, I'm so tired. The words. He didn't write about any of it. He didn't mention any of it. He mentioned he mentioned his children, his wife. I mean, nice. He was a father. He was a husband. He mentioned his failings. I guess he apologised, and his failing businesses. But he didn't mention what had happened. Just nothing. No closure. Oh, it's so frustrating. Canadian police had found his car like to the side of a road, and he had shot himself in the head. It feels so weird not to say, oh, he got a minimum of 22 years or, like there is none of that. He died. He killed himself. It's just, that's the end. And there's no answers. No answers. Obviously, all of the evidence, it's all there. It's pretty obvious what happened, but he never spoke about it. Didn't even write about it. The police believe that he killed over 21 people. So there were the I-70 murders and at least 11 people found in his garden. The truth is, it could have been many more. It really could have been many more. Also, just to note, just to play devil's advocate here, there was no solid physical evidence that Herb Baumeister was the I-70 killer. It's really, really highly suspected, but there was no blood found in his car or like anything linking him to those victims. So it's unsolved, but they think it was Herb, and it's highly likely. Also, there was no evidence that Herb was the person that murdered the countless bodies, because we don't know how many it was really. My hearing's just gone in that ear. That's fun. Yeah, we don't know, do we? But over 11, at least 11 people in his garden. There's no actual physical evidence. But again, 2 and 2 makes 4. And just to end this frustrating story, the day before Herb committed suicide, a Canadian police officer questioned him, and he gave his name and address to her. If the Hamilton police had decided to try and find him and arrest him or bring him in for questioning, the minute she would have put his name into the information, he would have come up and she would have arrested him and taken him in. But because it wasn't, and because they just continued to refuse to arrest him or just even have him in for questioning, they refused to put him under surveillance, everything. So that is why he was never caught, and he could have been caught the day before he committed suicide. So frustrating. And there's nothing to say that if they did get him, that he would have ever spoken about what he did or given any answers. Probably unlikely. The fact that he committed suicide and never mentioned it was just showed his character. He enjoyed the control of it, and he just didn't want to share what he'd done with anybody else. And that is all I have on today's frustrating case. Apologies again if the sound is not great at the beginning of this video. I really do apologise. I'm very, very tired. There's nothing I can do. I was like, I must turn that off, and then I forgot. I'm just so tired. Do I look like shit? I don't care if I look like shit, but I feel like I've been punched in the face a few times. I'm so tired. A couple of good nights sleep and I'll be right as rain. I don't think I have anything to report to you today. Just want to share some love. Thank you so much for your lovely comments, as always. And there's been a few people that have suggested cases recently. I do write them down. I do have everything, well, most of them, I believe, unless I miss any off. I hope I haven't. I eventually will get round to doing all of the cases that have been suggested or requested. I also remembered that I've got a video to make, fun, and I am looking forward to it, where I asked you for questions and you sent in me questions in the comments, and I need to make that video because it'll be so good to do that. I'm not going to replace a true crime video with it. I'm going to do it as an extra. So because of that, I'm going to wait until I finish my university for this year, which is at the end of May. So in June, I'll have so much more time. The first week of June, I just want to be asleep. Honestly, I just want to lay around, watch TV. Oh, Midsummer Murders, Jonathan Creek, get in. Literally sit, drink tea, eat toast, watch TV. Like that. That's what I want to do for a week. Have a bath, a couple of baths. So that will be then. But then after I've done that and I'm just normal again, perhaps, I will get round to doing that video. So I'm going to do it as an extra. So I'll just release it on a different day, but we will also have a true crime story on the Friday as per usual. Anyway, I'm going to go because I feel like I need a pint of coffee, and yeah, I need that desperately in my life right now. I love you so much. I'm so looking forward to having a chat with you this weekend. I really am. I am down for that. I'm in the mood. It will just cheer me up. So I'm looking forward to it. Have a beautiful weekend. Thank you so much for joining me for another true crime story. And a bottle of water. No gin. I'm too tired. I would literally fall asleep. Oh, and it's snowing, by the way. Snowing in spring. Love you all, and I shall see you all next week. Bye.